I was in a life group meeting several years ago, and the question was, is the earth young or old? I immediately responded and said, it's young, meaning only thousands of years old, opposed to billions of years. Even in a life group of staunch Bible believers, you could see the, apprehension to my conclusion. In fairness, this is understandable when you consider the emphasis on radioisotope dating, and the universe has been declared as being 14.5 billion years old, with the Earth being 4.5 billion years old. In academics, this is considered foundational to all other study. So our question is young versus old Earth important? Actually, it's more important than you might think. When we study the opposing worldview or beliefs and how everything came to be, we find a common thread among Big Bang development of solar system, of the Earth, and even the creation of the geological column. Also, history in the Earth and the life of its inhabitants, Darwinian evolution. The common thread here is deep time. Without billions and millions of years to explain the creation of the universe, galaxies, planets, and life forms that evolve, these explanations would have to be dismissed, as everything rests upon these large increments of time. Therefore, the question for the biblical creationists is to examine whether deep time is reasonable to be a conclusion of truth. To begin, we'll need to establish some baselines. Creationists are those who believe in the biblical account of everything coming to be. Naturalists are those who believe everything came to be in an unguided way, and this does include Big Bang and Darwinian evolution. Science is not a thing, as we often hear it referred to. It's a method to use in a systematic search for truth. And we need to understand this method to proceed. The first thing is we see something or contemplate something like, how old is the Earth? And this results in a question. Well, then, secondly, we form a proposed outcome or hypothesis. Well, then we design experiments or tests to evaluate the hypothesis. Now, these should be repeatable for verification of consistent results. Finally, we draw conclusions of whether or not the hypothesis was correct based upon the repeatable test results. Now, a conclusion should be voiced as either being probable or not probable. And if it's not probable, we then reconsider our hypothesis and start the entire process over again. Naturalists claim that science has proven their position of an old Earth, around 4.5 billion years old. So our question before us is, if that's true or not, has it actually been proven? So let's get right to it. The holy grail of secular naturalist dating, radioisotope dating. You've possibly heard of it called radiometric dating. Now, this takes known elements and calculates their rate of decay into another element or an isotope. The common methods used here are the uranium to lead, or the samarium to neodymium, the potassium to argon tests, and also the rubidium to strontium tests. All of these are methods that attempt to determine the decay rate or age of metamorphic or igneous rock. Metamorphic rocks are those that are formed under extreme heat and pressure deep under the Earth's surface. Igneous rocks are formed through the cooling and solidification of magma or lava from a volcanic eruption. Now, on a side note, sedimentary rock, sandstone, limestone, shale, can't be dated with these methods. Sedimentary rock is on full display in the Grand Canyon, sitting atop the Great Unconformity, the very bottom and flat portion of the Grand Canyon. Now back to dating. The element being measured is named the parent element, while the decayed element is the isotope, and it's named the daughter. Uranium to lead radioisotope dating is one of the preferred dating methods among genochronologists. Through a variety of mathematic applications, it's determined how long it takes for uranium to decay to its daughter isotope of lead. If you'd like a deeper information on this entire process, go to my blog. The web address is at the end of the video. And read through the blog article on scientific naturalism. Now, let's get to the primary factors. For any of these dating methods to be calculated, 3 assumptions must be made, or the calculations won't work. Let me emphasize, all 3 of these assumptions must be in place, or the dating method is invalid. The assumptions are, first, all daughter isotopes that are detected must be assumed to have come from the parent element. This means that any lead must have come from uranium, meaning there couldn't have been any lead present at the beginning of the rock's formation. Secondly, the rate of decay must be constant. Nothing can affect the rate in which it turns into the daughter isotope. The rock system must be closed. No daughter isotope can leak into the measurable system of the rock, which means nothing can leach into the rock. Now, though radioisotope dating was first discovered in 1902, it was first used to calculate ages in 1907. And though instrumentation has significantly increased in the reliability to eliminate contamination of samples in an attempt to make the results more reliable, there have been doubts since the beginning. Scientists had concerns from the beginning that the 3 assumptions that needed to be made couldn't be validated. The researchers assured us that these were reasonable assumptions. Well, on another side note, in 1907, slightly over 0.1% of the population had cars. The rest rode horses and drove horse-driven wagons. Just saying. Needless to say, methods have improved when determining the validity of this dating method. It's now widely recognized that lead is prominent throughout the earth and found in groundwater. And it has been determined that it is common for it to leach into the surrounding rocks. Therefore, the 3rd assumption has been proven to be false. Also, it's now been observed that solar activity in the way of neutrinos coming into our atmosphere erroneously affect decay rates, making a true decay rate unknown. So the 2nd assumption is now considered to be unknown and is invalidated. The eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980 brought new data to the table. And while it's been a treasure trove of data that has allowed for the updating of how volcanic and flood activity impact and form geological features, it's the igneous rocks that it produced of interest here. Mount St. Helens allowed for the discovery that igneous rock upon its formation contained both parent and daughter elements, providing observable proof that the first assumption is false. Now, like any technique, once you learn how, it's easy to use the testing technique everywhere. Volcanic eruptions around the world have yielded the same results, verifying both parent and daughter elements present in the resulting rock. Now remember, all three assumptions had to be in place for this dating method to be valid. Two have been found conclusively false, with the third being so erratic that it's unusable. Now let's go back to the scientific method. The premise was old Earth. Tests have been found completely unreliable. Therefore, the premise must be discarded. Now, I know you're thinking, but what are the other methods? Well, let's take a quick look. Though there is a tremendous discrediting research in place to these dating methods from observable samples around the world, we'll look at one example of lava flows, some from the Grand Canyon. Now, in samples tested, the potassium to argon test showed dates of 516 million years old. The rubidium to strontium dates were over 1 billion years old. And then the samarium to neodymium dating over 1.5 billion years old, conclusively demonstrating the wide discrepancy between dating methods. Lava flows have been observed in Hawaii and other parts of the world where they were forming, and were dated as millions, sometimes billions of years old. Mount St. Helens provided a growing lava dome from 1980 to 1986. In 1993, samples of the lava dome were extracted for analysis. Now, depending upon which dating method that was used you want to reference, we had dates anywhere from 340,000 years old to 2.8 million years old. Remember, the rocks are observed to be 7 to 13 years old. These dating methods demonstrate that the old Earth worldview cannot be concluded from these dating methods. While it hasn't been discounted, it certainly isn't validated. The radioisotope dating method is completely discredited, which is the foundation of all other dating techniques and deep time, which happens to still be taught as conclusive, which is needed for Big Bang and Darwinian evolution. Now, we've not examined another very popular dating method, carbon-14 dating. Not dating rocks, but things that were once alive. Join me in part 2 of Old versus Young Earth to discuss this incredibly important dating technique. Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about dinosaurs.